Wednesday night, 15 March 2019, Cyclone Idai tore through Zimbabwe with intense winds of up to 200 km per hour. In its first 24 hours, 600 millimeters of rainfall, which amounts to the average season rainfall, is received in Manicaland. The result is high-level destruction. Rivers and tributaries burst their banks, sweeping away infrastructure, and landslides wash away entire households. Small to medium enterprises, clinics, schools, water supply systems, power supplies, telecommunications, agriculture and accommodation infrastructures are destroyed, and in some communities, all that remains are rocks and wood. Analysts record Cyclone Idai is one of the worst tropical cyclones to affect Africa and the southern hemisphere. 497 people lost their lives, 326 went missing, and thousands are displaced. The survivors are left in deep shock as a major humanitarian crisis unfolds. But was the government of Zimbabwe prepared for this kind of catastrophe? What efforts were initiated to recover and restore normalcy in the affected areas? Zimbabwe has experienced cyclones dating back to 1904. However, none of these cyclones came with the level of destruction as Cyclone Idai. The magnitude of Cyclone Idai was never anticipated.
In terms of emergency preparedness, we were prepared to a certain extent in that we were using our previous experiences in handling this disaster. The only missing thing from the information we might have received from that early warning unit was we were supposed then to get the magnitude and extent of the problem.
Prior to the natural disaster, the government of Zimbabwe issued alert messages on the 14th of March, warning the nation of an impending cyclone and advised people to move to places of safety. The message was broadcasted through wide platform SMSs and mainstream media.
Takandozwa kuti radio yataura kuti cyclone Idai iri kuuya, tototi pamweni kunyeperwa kuzoti taata manheru. Kutozwa zviro zvotodhubuka, mvura dzototinhira tiri mumamhatso.
People were encouraged to move higher grounds to avert flood-related disasters. However, Cyclone Idai was more devastating on high ground, especially slopey areas. In Zimbabwe, the epicenter of the cyclone was Chimanimani East constituency in Manicaland. But other provinces, including Masvingo in the districts of Zaka, Ikita and Gutu, districts of Chikomba and partly Seke in Mashonaland East and Churumanzu in Midlands were also affected. On 17 March, the president declared the impact of Cyclone Idai in Zimbabwe as a state of national disaster.
Government is declaring 2 days of national mourning starting this Saturday in honor of all those we have lost and to spare a thought for those still grieving.
As the nation was still coming to terms with the high-level catastrophe following the natural disaster, His Excellency the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Emmerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa, toured the affected areas and addressed the victims as the cyclone united people from different political and religious persuasions. The First Lady, Mrs. Auxilia Mnangagwa, visited Chipinge and Ngangu to console those who had lost their loved ones. The government reacted swiftly and activated civil protection structures in affected areas to ensure victims were assisted. Emergency relief structures were initiated with the Zimbabwe National Army, leading to search and rescue missions. While people slept in Kopa, Machongwe and Ngangu areas of the Eastern Highlands, the life-giving rain became a watery graveyard as houses were washed away.
Line iri kubva kwesoko kumusoro kudzika zvakadai vanhu vese vakapera kufa. Inini nemhuri yangu ndakazopokonyuka ndikazonoponera zasi tikatutwa nematombo nematanda.
At least 347 were reported dead and buried in Zimbabwe. Most were believed to have been drowned into Mozambique and others buried under boulders in mud. 326 people are still missing.
Amongst those who lost their lives, we've got 158 who were swept away by the floods, and their bodies were discovered in Susunenga in Mozambique. And the Mozambican government, or the locals, they buried our people, of which we are very grateful. We are yet to visit the site and thank the Mozambican communities, but as government we haven't made up a decision as to whether we are going to exhume the bodies and rebury them back home.
In these small communities, almost everyone knows each other and everyone was affected. Some village members spent days digging and trying to recover the remains of their loved ones buried under boulders. The government of Zimbabwe, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, requested expertise from South Africa to help with the rescue and recovery efforts. A team of cadaver sniffer dogs from South Africa was able to recover trapped bodies under mudslides and boulders. At least 16 suspected bodies were identified in Gangu area of Chimanimani on the first day of the search. This was encouraging despite the fact that huge stones and massive debris were slowing the pace. The Ministry of Health and Childcare and National University of Science and Technology that were exhumed.
The immediate thing is to look for food, to look for shelter, so that the people whose houses have been damaged can be sheltered.
The statistics of the infrastructure damage and destruction is devastating. In all the affected provinces of Manicaland, Midlands, Masvingo and Mashonaland East, 43,883 households were affected. 26,682 were moderately affected and 17,201 were left completely homeless. Many people lost everything they had, including food, clothing, furniture, and sources of livelihood. Following the declaration of the disaster by the president, the response towards relief was overwhelming. Zimbabwe received condolences and donations towards humanitarian support from the international, regional, and local communities.
Well, I had the opportunity to deliver letters of condolence from the Queen, Prince Charles, and the Dukes and Duchesses of Cambridge and Sussex. And those letters express very clearly their heartfelt sympathies for the people of Zimbabwe at this difficult time with Cyclone Idai.
In all this strife, Zimbabweans also rallied together, donating food and clothes. The government of Zimbabwe, through the military, the Ministry of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare, the Ministry of Women Affairs, Community, Small and Medium Enterprises, worked closely with non-governmental organizations like the World Vision in handling food supplies. The major challenge was moving supplies to all affected areas because the road network was badly damaged.
Katutenda government ndekuti tsiko yari kuita masponsors tinokutenda Chinese iri kunza ma-excavator tinovatenda nerutsigiro rwavo na president wedu tinomutenda nekutipa masoja especially masoja ari kushanda zvisingaiti.
Gangu Township in Chimanimani was the hardest hit area during the cyclone. Floods, mudslides with huge rock boulders ripped through a section of the suburb, demolishing homesteads in its path. All that was left in the trail of disaster was a blanket of rocks. 490 hectares of land has been identified for relocation of 201 families in Nedziwa, and Econet Zimbabwe has pledged to construct 500 standard houses. Displaced families were given shelter in tents provided by international non-governmental organizations.
On the relocation, program, a number of areas have been identified as being suitable for, those whose houses were destroyed to be relocated. We have Green Mount in Chimanimani Urban, where 1,333 stands have been planned. The layout plan has been approved And what we require now to do is to provide on-site and off-site infrastructure in the manner of roads, electricity, water, and sewer systems.
In Chirumanzu district of Midlands Province, 120 households were affected and 7 homesteads were completely destroyed. The Gwarega family is one of the victims whose 2-bedroom structure and the kitchen were completely destroyed by the cyclone.
Tingati pakadonha dzimba dzangu idzi pakatanga kudonha bedroom ari masikati. Bedroom payakadonha yakatanga kudonha yekunze, mvura ndobva yaramba ichinaya ibva yanorova yemukati ndobva yadonha futi. Pakadonha bedroom masikati, manheru ndobva tarira mukitchen. Ndobva kitchen yadonha tiri mukati, tikabuda nepaburi.
Marshal Gwarega, one of the sons, had to stop going to school to assist the family in rebuilding, as the family is still temporarily sheltered in the tents provided by the Red Cross.
Isusu se local authority tasangana nema-challenges atakasangana nawo emafasham this year, takarealize kuti most of the affected families yanga iri issue yequality yema-structures anga akavakwa. It was a learning experience kwatiri, and we are in the process yekuona kuti tinga educate communities edu sei so that vave aware of the importance yekuvakawo ma-structures are durable.
Through the Civil Protection Unit, the government managed to mobilize food relief and building material like cement, doors and door frames for rebuilding. In Manicaland East Province, out of the 9 districts, 4 districts, which are Chikomba, Wedza, Seke, and Mudzi, were affected. But it was in Chikomba, particularly in Masasa, Ward 17, where the devastating effects of the cyclone were felt. At least one 83-year-old man lost his life and 123 households were left homeless. Temporary structures were erected as remedial action.
Right now, all the affected people have been housed temporarily, but there is need now to focus on the post-recovery period, which we have now started on, which we have now embarked on. We have been assisted by the Civil Protection Unit in Harare, which has given us fuel, and that fuel we have used to ferry bricks, which you see are here, so that we can build a government standard house for these people who have been affected by the cyclone.
In Gutu Central constituency of Masvingo Province, 2,119 households were affected, and among them 185 people were left homeless. Mrs. Sorotia Chigwindiri is one of the beneficiaries whose house was completely destroyed. Through the assistance from the government, Great Zimbabwe University built her a standard house, a house which was later commissioned by the First Lady, Mrs. Auxilia Mnangagwa. Schools were part of the social amenities that were destroyed by the cyclone. In Manicaland, 72 schools were affected, whilst Masvingo Province had 32, 5 in Manicaland East, and only 1 school in Midlands Province. 50 students, their headmaster, and 3 teachers died when the cyclone ravaged Dzingire Primary School near Copper Growth Point, now considered the epicenter of the disaster. St. Charles Luanga Seminary School Mission and Secondary School in Chimanimani had to suspend its boarding services after a landslide broke into one of the dormitories. 2 students and the security personnel passed on that fateful night. The kitchen, the dining hall, toilets, and some dormitories were left in bad shape. The government of Zimbabwe had to take the affected students to Harare for counseling and psychosocial support before readmitting the boarding students into other schools. Land has also been allocated to relocate the St. Charles Luanga School. Tafara High School in Bikita East constituency of Masvingo Province had 18 squat hole toilets destroyed. Through the Zim Cyclone Go Fund and the Old Students Association, 10 blight toilets were built in just 4 days and more are still under construction.
We had thought of water system toilets as the school is water reticulated. But because of the emergency, we thought of hurriedly constructing the Blair toilets so that we could open the schools with some hygienic facilities.
In Midlands Province, at Gambiza Primary School, a classroom block and teachers' accommodation were blown away by the strong winds. In this province, the government of Zimbabwe has just launched the reconstruction phase of all distracted infrastructure.
We've almost procured all the materials that is required. So as you can see, this project was launched by the Minister of State, Comrade Larima Vima, about 2 weeks ago. And there's a very significant progress. Our hope is that when we open schools during the 3rd term of this calendar year, this classroom block will be complete and the teachers' accommodation.
In the aftermath of the cyclone, 16 bridges in Manicaland and 2 bridges in Mashonaland East were damaged. Over 1,000 kilometers of road network was destroyed and some roads were critically blocked by landslides. Buses were sinking into tarred roads. The first 3 days were difficult to fly due to bad weather and there was an urgent need to construct access routes to assist trapped people. Transporting relief supplies to Kopa, which was in the epicenter of the disaster in Chimanimani, was difficult since most roads were cut off. A 23-kilometer road was constructed from Jopa to Kopa and a temporary bridge was put over Risiti River. This road was important as it also gave access to other hard-hit areas like Muchangwa. The road was commissioned by Honorable Minister July Moyo on the 11th of May 2019.
And to get to this epicenter of the disaster, which is at Kopa, we needed to open roads from Chipinge. And that you, as Urban Councils Association, saw it fit to help the people of Chipinge and the people of Chimanimani is commendable. I want to open this road and thank you very much.
There is still need for long-term sustainable solutions in terms of the road network. The government is planning the next phase to construct more permanent road infrastructure.
At the moment, we are planning to put up permanent structures now, permanent bridges. Because if we leave these bridges the way they are, these are temporary bridges and they will not last. If we just receive the next heavy rains, these bridges will be washed away.
An estimated 270,000 people were left in need of critical, life-saving support to enable them to recover from the impact of the floods in all affected districts. 184 people were injured during the floods and there was a high risk of waterborne diseases. The interruption of water supplies and hygiene infrastructure also posed a risk of diarrhea. With 22 clinics affected in Manicaland Province and 1 in Mashonaland East, the government had to move in fast to avert a looming health scare. The Army and several non-governmental organizations worked closely with the Ministry of Health and Child Care to provide healthcare and supply of essential drugs to various healthcare centers in the affected districts.
Tiri kufara norubatsiro rwatiri kupiwa nehurumende yedu noti mishonga taanayo takwanisa kupiwa matende. Tiri pano tinobatsirwa vana vedu vakurapiwa tatati vane problem yekuti vana vedu vari kubudisa makonye.
Field hospitals were set up to treat casualties and those seriously injured were airlifted to nearby hospitals. 40 doctors drawn from PSMI, Zimbabwe Medical Association, Zimbabwe Republic Police, and the military were deployed to Chipinge hospitals and other volunteers were also in the field. Rehabilitation of Muchadzia Clinic in Chimanimani, which was the worst affected clinic, has commenced following the delivery of the requisite materials. There are plans to construct a parapet wall along the roof to protect it from strong winds. With water pipes destroyed, the lack of clean water sources in Chimanimani and Chipinge was a major concern for waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid. There were still dead bodies lying buried under the rubble in the riverbeds, which were also contaminating drinking water. The government, through Zimbabwe National Water Authority, provided tankers and bowsers for drinking water. The District Development Fund is assisting in the rehabilitation of more than 70 boreholes in Manicaland and 16 in Masvingo. In water supply stations, ZINWA provided electrical generators and water purifiers. Chipinge town had to endure several weeks of no water supply after its water source, Bangazani Dam, overflowed, destroying about 70 meters of pipeline.
The government, through ZINWA, they came to our rescue. They provided us with some engineers. Our engineer and the engineers from ZINWA, they managed to salvage this pipe. Then one of our partners, Planning International, they bought us the pipes, cement, and the river sand, and the concrete stones for us to reconstruct this pipeline.
The rich red soil of Chimanimani and abundant water supplies make the land very conducive for agriculture. Farmers in the various communal areas grow a variety of crops and practice animal husbandry. When the cyclone struck, agricultural farmland, crops, inputs, granaries, equipment, and irrigation schemes were damaged, heightening food insecurity in the worst affected villages of Chipinge and Chimanimani.
Tingati pane vane vakarasikirwa nemombe dzakaerera nemvura dzatadza kuzoyambuka kuti dzibve kumafuro kuye kumusha, takati wandei aripo vanhu akati wandei nembudzi nemombe ndo zvimwe zvakauya, asi ni pachangu mombe dzakaenda nemvura itu.
The government has also recognized the impact of the cyclone on food security. 16 of the 18 affected irrigation schemes are now functional, though at low capacity until full restoration works are done.
18 affected irrigation schemes are now functional, but some of the works were temporary, and we are going to be working on permanent works.
The most affected being companies included Border Timbers, Wattle Company, Allied Timbers, Tanganda, Matanuska, and Manica Boards and Doors, as they could not access their premises or raw materials since the roads were unusable. This affected the transportation of raw materials and export markets. Through the temporary road constructions, this challenge has been addressed. At Peacock Business Center, small to medium enterprises that included supermarkets, grinding mills, carpentry, and other small SMEs were all swept away. All that is left is a plain flat ground.
Panapa nonzi pa Peacock, mashops aya ari panapa. Akabva atorwa ese, apana kana narimwe rakasara pa Peacock panapa. Zvese zvakabva zvabaya zvigayo, zvaiya pano mashopu aiya pano. Kwakuzouya pane aita zvewoodwork futi zvekare pano zvakabaya, painga paine varume aita zvewoodwork ainga ari anokwana kuita 3 ainga achiita zvekutsetsa panapa, zvinhu zvavo zvese zvakabaya, zvese mapurena zvese hapana chakasara ba, zvese zvakabaya.
Currently we have compiled the list of all the affected people, and a funding has been requested towards assisting recapitalization of the small businesses.
Power supply has been restored in areas such as Chimanimani, Ngangu, Machongwe, Roscommon, and part of Biriri.
All areas which had no power now have power reconnected. And we want to thank ZETTC for working flat out, even during the night, to restore power. And in Chimanimani, all areas were again connected to power, except the Tilbury area where they are left with only 3 kilometers, which we hope that by mid-August or even before, Tilbury will again be reconnected, to power.
The horrific sins of Cyclone Idai haunt the survivors daily, and they are in need of psychosocial support. The cyclone claimed entire families, breadwinners and guardians, thus creating a new and desperate situation of single parents and child-headed families. Families now have to face an uncertain future, many without shelter and certainly without food and livelihoods. Through the Minister of Social Welfare and the Minister of Education, the government set up psychosocial counseling centers in most parts of Chimanimani to deal with the acute stress, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorders. The government of Zimbabwe is still holding consultations with the people of Chimanimani and the community leaders to find sustainable ways of assisting the victims of Cyclone Idai.
Tauya kuzoteerera isusu vehurumende kuti madzimambo vatungamiriri vekuno kuchimanimani zvakaitwa zvese munozviona sei. Pasara pacho panoda kugadziriswa ngepapi chaipo.
After meeting the short-term needs, the government of Zimbabwe needs to build back better permanent bridges, rehabilitate the road network, build schools, hospitals, and homes. There is need to restore running water, electricity, telecommunications, and agriculture-related infrastructure, which requires mammoth resources.
All the interventions that we made were temporary. The structures that were damaged, infrastructure that was damaged, requires a lot of money, huge amounts of money. So at the moment, we are appealing to government and all our development partners to chip in. Why? Because the rains are soon going to be upon us. And already with the drizzlings that we experience, some roads are already difficult to navigate.
In part 2 of this documentary, we bring you the second phase of the government of Zimbabwe's response to Cyclone Idai, which is the rebuilding of damaged infrastructure. Zimbabwe has to rebuild.